It's now my pleasure to introduce the second panel of the day, Dismantling Go-to-Market Barriers. And if you're a small and medium-sized company in the audience, then I think this should be of extreme interest to you. And I'd like to introduce the moderator, Saiedeh Razavi. And Saiedeh is the director of the McMaster Institute for Transportation and Logistics, and as well, Saiedeh holds a number of positions within the Department of Civil Engineering at McMaster. She is an associate professor. She's the acting chair graduate, the chair in heavy construction, also an associate member of the School of Geography and Earth Sciences at McMaster, as well as her specialty is smarter mobility. So Saiedeh, I would like to welcome you to the stage to introduce yourself, your panel, and moderate your panel. Thank you. Oop, I think you're muted.
There you go, we got it. So thank you so much, Chris. And hello and welcome everyone to this panel on dismantling go-to-market barrier. My name is Saiedeh Razavi, and as Chris mentioned, I'm an associate professor and director of MITL, or McMaster Institute for Transportation and Logistics. I'm also a steering committee member for Fluid Intelligence, which is a joint venture with Hamilton Oshawa Port Authority on supply chain multimodal data analytics. I put it here because I thought it might be related to some of the work some of you guys are doing, and we would be very delighted to be connected. In my role as the director of MITL, I work with industry, academia, all levels of government, and all modes of transportation to lead evidence-based research on mobility and supply chain. I come from a background which is multidisciplinary with formal education in computer engineering with a bachelor degree, a master's degree in artificial intelligence, and a PhD in civil engineering. Over the last 20 years, I've worked on projects on smart mobility, smart infrastructure, construction, and supply chain. And now it's my distinct pleasure to invite our expert panelists to join me. Delighted to have here with us Mike Branch, Vice President of Data Analytics at Geotab, Susan Booth, Head of ITS Innovation and Planning at Ontario Ministry of Transportation, Scott Cober, National Practice Leader of Transportation Department at BFL Canada. Mike, Susan, and Scott, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Would you please introduce yourselves to our audience, and let's start with Mike.
Great, thank you so much, Saiedeh. Yes, so I head up data and analytics at Geotab, and for those of you who aren't aware of Geotab, we are a connected vehicle platform company, telematics. We started in 2000. We're Oakville-based company with locations all across the globe. I actually myself joined as a small business. My business was acquired. We did a lot of work in data visualization. It was acquired by Geotab about 5 years ago, and since then I've seen Geotab grow from monitoring about 400,000 vehicles across the globe to over 2.4 million vehicles. We've grown in size from about 200 people to just over 2,000 now in the company. So quite explosive growth in the last little while. And my team in specific, we've grown from about 5 to about 100 in that short period of time as well. So we help our customers from the perspective of safety, productivity. We do a ton with regards to sustainability and electric vehicles, and looking at how we can provide our fleet customers, electric vehicle suitability assessments to help them transition into this new world. So really excited to be here today to talk through, some of the barriers that I certainly see with regards to the connected vehicle. And with that, I will pass it over to Susan to introduce herself.
Great, thank you. So good afternoon, I guess. My name is Susan Booth. I'm the manager of the Intelligent Transportation Systems Office at the Ministry of Transportation. And the Ministry of Transportation is responsible for all of the provincial highways across the province, mostly some of our large freeways, the 401, the QEW, those types of things. For anybody who's interested, the Intelligent Transportation Office is responsible for all of that roadside technology that you see that allows MTO to monitor and operate the provincial highway network. We have cameras and sensors to count the traffic and monitor congestion. We've got communication network across the network in parts of it, and we've got equipment on the side of the road to help us monitor the highway, cameras and signs to communicate with drivers, and a whole communication network, wireless and fiber optic cable across the province. There's two parts to our office, one part that does planning, design, and maintenance of all of that equipment, and another part of our office that does innovation and planning, looking at the next generation of ITS, and are getting heavily involved in planning for a smart mobility future. I'm here, as I say, from my office, but I will try and represent the broader MTO today. We're a very large organization, and working as part of the provincial government. We're responsible for regulations of vehicles on the road. We're responsible for everything to do with the provincial highway network, planning, design, maintenance, operation of that highway. And I do have some 15 years of experience in doing highway planning. And we're also responsible for transportation safety, commercial vehicles, passenger vehicles, licensing, safe operation, driver education. And that's myself from the Ministry of Transportation. And now I will pass it off to Scott in our panel. Thanks.
Thanks, Susan. Appreciate it. Scott Cober, BFL Canada, National Practice Leader. BFL is one of the largest risk management, insurance broker, and benefit consulting firms in Canada. We have 23 offices across Canada and over 1,000 employees and growing rapidly. I've been at BFL for 3 years and actually on the broker side for 30 years. For some reason, I decided to take insurance in school out of Mohawk College, so stayed in the side of the insurance broker for all this time. Spending 20 years on the fleet side, mostly concentrating on the long haul trucking space. So when I'm talking today, I'm probably going to concentrate more on the commercial side opposed to the personal line side or the private passenger side. In my role, I do specialize in the heavy commercial side for large fleets, and that can be a traditional loss program or even offshore captive products with high retention. We also at BFL started getting into the sharing risk economy in the past 4 to 5 years, whether it be peer-to-peer, ride sharing, or even recently subscription policies as well. We're seeing that industry continue to grow. While I'm not an expert on autonomous vehicles, I have been actually studying telematics for the past 15 years. We've been helping our clients actually to understand the driver behavior data to help them lower their loss costs and actually help the insurers as well improve their loss ratios. That has been a natural progression actually into the connected auto as we see our clients get into advanced driver assistance systems, which now we're hearing our clients getting more involved into the autonomous mode. There is a bit of misconception on the commercial side, which we can talk about further, but I'm excited to discuss this, and it is a growing field for our industry. So I'll turn it over and invite everyone back to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, Susan, and Scott. I now will briefly introduce the theme of this discussion and then facilitate further conversation. Towards the end, the panel will also take questions from the audience if you have time. So if you have questions, please post them in the chat section. Innovation and application of data and digital technologies in our supply chain are the key to competitiveness, economic growth, productivity, and job creation. However, it's no secret that our innovators, particularly in the connected and autonomous goods movement sector, are moving faster than the policy and regulatory environment. So as many innovative startups and SMEs are entering into this competitive market, where does one begin in understanding the evolving regulations and barriers to market entry? According to a recent report by Transport Canada, one of the main challenges of supply chain market entry is the vagueness and underdevelopment of policy and regulatory environment. For example, novel solutions such as drones and platoonings are required to operate following strict and relatively clear regulations in Canada, while the regulatory environment for delivery robots are not as clear or well-defined. We are also continuously challenged by public apprehension about autonomous connected goods movement and their safety, and reservations over data security, privacy, surveillance, fairness, equity, and so on. Concerns are often directed at both the technologies and the providers or the firms that are dealing with creating and providing those technologies and solutions. I would also like to acknowledge that In recent years, the government of Canada has extensively invested on building ecosystems in technology and superclusters, as well as investments on Canadian startups and scale-ups. But the government alone cannot take it further. The key is partnership, integration, and adaptivity. We need to work together to address the current barriers and build collaboration and trust towards innovative and publicly acceptable technologies and solutions. So this panel of experts here will discuss some of these challenges and will help you gain a better understanding of how to address challenging issues such as insurance, data privacy, regulations, and technology adoption as you make your way towards commercialization. So when it comes to smart, connected, and autonomous goods movement, data privacy, security, and governance are often the first concerns that come to mind. Mike, you are in the business of telematics data and data analytics. So your name for me resonates with the word data and forward thinking. So here's a question for you. I wonder what barriers around data do companies, particularly startups, face in working with connected and automated systems or smart city infrastructure?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question, Saiedeh. I think certainly the devil is often in the details with data, and as a kind of a small to medium sized enterprise, if you're looking at doing something with connected vehicle data, the standards around data frequency and the data coming off of a vehicle, there's no good set of standards for building on top of. So if you're looking at, let's give an example, building a predictive maintenance model. Maybe you're an SME that wants to get into the predictive maintenance space, and you're looking at signals coming from vehicle data. The signals are out there. They're fantastic. They're great. They're collected so disparately from different OEMs across the board. And if you're looking to try and scale things, the devil is often in the details with the data that you can collect. Not even to say that if you were looking at, say, cranking voltage for, trying to predict when a battery is going to fail, just the fact that is there, that cranking voltage is there, doesn't mean anything. What frequency is it being collected at? Do you have access to that data to be able to pull it? And so those can sometimes be quite troublesome barriers, especially if you're an SME trying to get access to this data, understanding the frequency, the fact that it's not standardized across the board to create products on top of is challenging. So I think normalizing that data is challenging. Data sharing agreements are another huge, I think, bottleneck to advancing, and it depends on who you're trying to establish those agreements with. But you will spend a long time. So just be prepared for a lengthy time in data sharing agreements and going through that bit. I think we were talking about actually the other day, if you can align yourself with an organization who has some of those agreements in place and that you can get that permission to leverage and use that data. Those can sometimes be a little bit easier entry points for you. The other thing that I've seen as well too is don't play this game. It's not fun. It takes a long time as well too. Play the what data do you want? What data do you have game. We've gone back and forth so many times, and oftentimes if you're trying to create valuable insight, you need access to that raw data sometimes, and there are privacy concerns. There are a whole whackload of concerns, but you have to do, I think, your best to figure out how you can get access to that, because if you play the what data do you have, what data do you want, you're just going to go back and forth and spin your wheels many, many, many times. So work with organizations who actually have the permission to provide you with that data in the first place, because you can, again, spin your tires quite a bit. So the data sharing agreements, the data quality, those are some of the I think bigger barriers that I've certainly encountered. And you can spend a lot of time thinking about these things as opposed to advancing your business, especially for SMEs.
Thanks so much, Mike. You kind of alluded to answer a question that I was going to ask, but I'm going to still put it out there that I wonder what regulatory requirement must be met as it relates to data collected from telematic devices and infrastructure?
What don't? There's so much there. The two biggest areas I'll focus on are data privacy and data residency. And depending on how you want to scale, right? So there's privacy legislation that is coming up from, I think, every corner of the world. And what makes it challenging is the fact that not only is it at the national level, sometimes it's at the subnational level. You get the CPPA, CPRA now in California, you get GDPR, you get different state level, privacy agreements. And it's very, very challenging to develop a risk posture around how your company will operate when privacy is changing, right? So you almost have to put an ethical hat on and think about like what is the intent behind some of these, and start. You really have to have a pulse on what's happening out there globally, specifically if you do want to scale. So I find certainly that challenge, especially I think within the world of autonomous vehicles and connected vehicles, where geospatial data is not well understood from a privacy landscape. What data is considered private? If you get my trace data driving from home all the way to the Geotab office, obviously that is very private data. Now, if I were to aggregate that data and have at the corner of Bronte Road and Lakeshore, there's a number of harsh driving incidents that happen. We categorize that as a hazardous driving area. That isn't private data, but that the spectrum is quite broad. So I think a deep understanding around geospatial data and privacy is important to understand. And then data residency. If you are looking at going global, data residency and where the data sits, where it's housed is huge. And it may sound like a very simple thing, but think about the impact that has, because where that data lands, you have to replicate your systems effectively in each of those jurisdictions to take advantage of any downstream analytics, right? So that means you've upped your cost by N times for the N jurisdictions that you're entering into. So you have to be very careful about the jurisdiction that you're entering into. Does it make business sense? Because I will say it's not as simple as flipping a switch and all of a sudden you're in the EU and you're in Canada and you're in US. It takes a lot of work and coordination around your information technology systems. So those are the two biggest things that I will say that I certainly encounter on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you so much, Mike. Speaking of regulatory and privacy and other regulations, perhaps I want to invite Susan to chip in. Susan, what processes or licensing systems does MTO have in place for companies looking to develop and test connected or autonomous transportation systems and solutions?
Thanks. Susan here from the Ministry of Transportation. So at the moment, we have a regulation in place for an AV pilot. So that's a 10-year program that allows people to come and test their AV pilots on roads across Ontario. All of our information is online, and I will tell you up front that this is not my area of expertise. So although I've consulted internally before giving you these answers, I highly recommend you go online to our website to get this. The regulation has been in place since I think 2016 or 2017. We go through a regular process for reviewing it and seeing how it's working for industry, because as Saiedeh, you said that this is all evolving so fast. And so we've tried to make this very flexible regulation so that there's a lot of process involved in creating regulations. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a process that was dynamic and allowed us to add it and edit it. So we're on version number 3 right now. I think it's actually out in the public realm for consultation and for comment. But this program allows testing of level 4 and level 5 vehicles on our highways or on any public road in Ontario. There's all kinds of rules and regulations about how it works, and that's all online. It's open to auto manufacturers, technology companies, academia, and parts manufacturers, which is, I think, where maybe we get some of our audience today. It's quite a rigorous process because you have to understand that provincial highways in particular and open roads in general is a very hostile environment. And as a road authority, our our paramount goal is safety, and so we want to make very sure that there's lots of safety regulations and safety proven safety in any of these AV pilots. So it's a very it's a pretty robust system, but trying to also be open for new technologies and for evolving stuff. There are liability requirements. There's quite a large process, and we've got help online for all of that. We're looking to expand that regulation that came out a few years ago, and that's what's up for discussion and comments right now. We're looking at adding in regulations for AV. For sidewalk robots and for smart farm equipment and all of those things that got lost and missing in the first round of regulation. So we are trying to be adaptable and make sure we've got regulations in place. In my office, we also do piloting of technology for ITS in particular. And then we do that on a much smaller scale, basically with our existing contractors and our existing consultants, and they bring in sort of new suppliers. Again, we've got quite a harsh environment on the highway. We're looking for things that are generally already commercially available. But we're a sponsor from AVEN. I attended the session just before this, which were all of the regional tech centers, and that's really where we see at the Ministry of Transportation why we put our money into that. We really see that as a place where we can get these smaller organizations to start testing on roads and in closed environments as well. So yeah, we've got legislation in place for AVs, and we're always doing a review, and we're doing some policy work in this area today about what the AV world will be in the future. What will a driver be? Because all of our laws and regulations and acts are based on drivers in the vehicle, sitting there steering. And so we're looking at reviewing the Highway Traffic Act and things like that to figure out what that means if there is no driver, and who's responsible for that. And we're doing some work with the insurance industry, and what does that mean on the insurance side? So that's all the policy part of the Ministry of Transportation. It's also looking at this whole space.
Thank you very much, Susan. Very comprehensive. I was going to ask you about how you guys deal with evolving, advancing technologies, and how you adapt with those technologies for regulation, testing, and so on. But you almost answered that too. Do you want to add anything further?
Sure. As I say, within my office, we've got existing technologies that we've been using for 25 years, and we've got sort of natural processes to continually be on the lookout for new cameras or new sensors or new communication models, because that's our core business. And if you're in the technology business, you know that stuff doesn't last for 35 years and you got to get a new camera. The old one's not even available. So we've got sort of some of that stuff intuitively built into our processes. But obviously we're dealing with existing commercially available stuff that maybe is just new to Ontario. So yeah, for the really up and coming new technology, the biggest thing is the AVEN and all of the programs through AVEN and the regional tech centers is really what we're here to promote. And encourage people to make use of on the smaller scale for the new SMEs that are coming up. We also do work with universities, and there's a lot of work going on in academia to look at some of this stuff as well. We try and give the advice of a road authority who's living it and operating a highway, where our interest is, where we think the opportunities are, and where our needs are.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Susan. Scott, a question that many of our connected and autonomous technology providers and innovators have when it comes to your sector, which is the insurance industry, is that how does the insurance industry evaluate the risk of autonomous vehicles today? What factors are taken into consideration when it comes to that kind of assessment and evaluations?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. And my short answer is they're going to ask you a ton of questions, unfortunately. And for SMEs, it may be a longer process than you're expecting. So a lot of lead time as you're going down this path. Let me just start by saying the insurance market right now is not as favorable as it was in the past. We're dealing with some market corrections over the past 3 to 4 years. Auto hasn't been as profitable and they are making corrections, which means they're driving up pricing. So as we're seeing some flattening, we just don't have the same capacity. And because this is an emerging space, the insurance companies are still trying to get their arms around what the risk is. But what I'll do is I'll list a few that are clearly important here, but certainly the background of the team applying for the insurance is important. And is this a startup, or is this a mature company from the US, or other words, expanding to Canada, looking maybe to test in our climate weather? What is the financial strength is another big one, because the SMEs aren't going to have, in all due respect, a large premium pool out of the gate. There's a very big time element here. So they want to make sure that in 12 months, 24 months, client will be around. So is it VC money, or is it, stated investment money? So that's another big one. And they will have NDA signed if there's financials being exchanged. The scenario, is starting in phases. Is this a closed track, then going to public roads? And what is a vehicle? You may see some hesitancy if there's passenger hazard on this autonomous testing, opposed to a last mile courier or a heavy commercial truck. And on the heavy commercial side, are you hauling? Is it just bobtail for autonomous? Or actually, what is the cargo you're actually hauling and testing? And that'll be a big one as well, because if you're hauling dry freight compared to bulk, those stopping distances will be different. And those systems will actually have to learn all that based on the weight of the vehicle. Then you get into operational exposures. Is there a safe harbor, emergency stopping location? Is someone online that can actually monitor and reprogram this vehicle from that side? Technical questions, of course, is what is the equipment? LiDAR, cameras, 4G, 5G. But the big one is what's the value of that equipment? Because most times we're seeing the equipment could be more than the actual vehicle, which certainly is going to be a factor into the underwriter's consideration. Cyber, of course, is a big one, but probably the one that we do face some hurdles on is contractual risks. When you go down this path, your suppliers are going to have you sign contracts, and the insurers want to make sure, is there a hold harmless? What is covered by insurance, or what is contractually outside that world? So those are just a few, but again, it will be unfortunately a lengthier process as we educate the insurer. One point though is it is important to find a broker that understands and has the market connections, because this will be a true partnership. Once you've found that domestic or international carrier to help you, you certainly want to work with them and collaboratively with your broker so that long term there's no hiccups or not understanding what the actual risk is as you move into different pilot phases.
Thanks, Scott. So based on what you just explained, is a connected or autonomous vehicle considered to have a lower safety risk in your insurance industry, or does the cost of advanced driver assistance components and their potential repair possibly increase the insurance cost?
Yeah, I believe it does have a lower risk, but I'm not an underwriter or an actuary, so my answer won't actually go down. But on the personal line side, we are seeing discounts right now when you purchase a vehicle and it has ADS or collision avoidance systems. We're not seeing discounts if you're in level 2 or any OEM has a function of that. It's not being discounted yet. Certainly in the future, we hope so. On the commercial side though, no, not so much. What they're doing is they're baking your collision avoidance systems and all that into the final pricing. So we can't give you a tangible savings to say you have this safety technology, here's 5–10% off. Until you can prove that the technology works, and that could be a 12–24 months down the line, because insurance unfortunately always looks backwards. With predictive data, we'd love them to look forward so we can actually do more of a usage-based insurance model and maybe say, hey, you're manual and then you're autonomous, and we can actually bill you accordingly to the risk. That would certainly be a wish list in the future, but unfortunately, it's still based on driver behavior. So whatever level you have right now, we still need that driver to take control of the vehicle. So from an insurance standpoint, that's probably not the best answer you want on the commercial side. Cost of repairs, though, as I said earlier, will play a part. Because of the add-on equipment, they are going to price it to that effect. Having said that, though, there's also some disadvantages here for the safety equipment. Ontario has a no-fault system. So do many other provinces coming down the line. We can get into this further in the future, but the Insurance Act needs to change. The disadvantage, kind of what we're seeing on the autonomous side, is if that commercial vehicle with that equipment is not at fault in a loss, we can't subrogate back against the party who hit us. So on a commercial insurance policy, it's money in, money out. We can actually have for example, $1 million premium, but you come off $1.5 million loss year, but they're all not at fault losses, you will pay an increase on the insurance. So kind of unfair right now for the autonomous vehicle, because the subrogation rules, we're probably going to be, and hopefully we're correct, they're not at fault more than we're at fault. But again, we are looking at changes to it, but on that short answer, I guess, not yet are we getting the discounts we want on that side.
Thanks so much, Scott. I saw a question came from the audience, and I noticed that Richard, to some degree, addressed that question. I want to pose it later on, but the question is about climate change and how autonomous and connected, or better to say, smart supply chain can contribute potentially to reducing carbon emission and to the climate change problem. So I'll get back to this question later on. For now, I have a quick question for Susan. What other organizations, associations, and government agencies are key in enabling a true, smart, connected goods movement system?
So the Ministry of Transportation, I guess, I think I maybe answered. When I was preparing for this, I was answering a different question. Our biggest partner so far has definitely been Avon, and they've got a lot of opportunity for the bringing up of new technologies and things like that. As a road authority, we're also working with other road authorities to try and understand how the world is going to change, and we've got a couple of liaison groups between the federal government and the provincial government and the municipal government to try and sort of share these concerns about how transportation is going to change as a road authority perspective. So there is work going behind the scenes on a policy level between the intergovernment and on a sharing of what people are piloting and what work is going on in Hamilton or in Durham or in Windsor, Essex, which you guys all heard about at the last session. So we are working, trying to create sort of our own little ecosystem as fellow government road authorities at the different provincial levels. But we're really, for new technology, we're really looking towards Avon to help with bringing on that new technology. We definitely have a lot of existing industry, and I guess that would be my other piece of advice, I guess, for new people coming in. We've got a lot of existing large companies that are very much into their existing business, and they're looking to pivot and to change and to bring new technologies in. So I think you're seeing a lot of large companies put money into research, work with universities to grow that research, to make their products better. They're looking for partnerships and new friends with new SMEs that are coming on board with new pieces of technology. There's a lot of partnership that the industry is basically doing themselves, right? You can't wait for government to lead all of this. We'll never move fast enough. So we want to have an environment that is considerate and helpful and the least amount of burden as possible, while protecting for public safety. And then we're working with existing partners, and we're working across government, and we're working with all the incubators with these regional tech sites to get people a little more ready for commercialization and into the market, for sure. I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you so much. You did. So it actually connects me to another idea that I want to ask Mike. Susan mentioned a lot of big companies work with industry, work with academia, work with startups, SMEs, and so on. Does Geotab work with the startups or other jurisdictions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, Geotab's go-to-market strategy, we don't go direct to our customers, which is I think important to consider, right? So we operate via a network of partners, and this partner ecosystem is what we've kind of created, and I think is really a differentiator for Geotab in the market as well too. So Similar to how you would have, an App Store or a Google Marketplace, Geotab has its marketplace as well too, where we have a number of different partners, software and hardware. We've got hardware vendors who, have an add-on to our Go device, which sits in the vehicle. And can do everything from, tracking, the temperature for cold chain of custody in the back of a reefer unit and everything as goods are getting shipped, and that funnels through our system. So there's hardware partnerships that we have established that connect with our device and work with our customers, business needs. And then there's also a number of different software partnerships. So whereby we will work with these partners to provide value to our end customers. Is there a software platform you already have? Can you integrate that nicely with the Geotab ecosystem and pull the data directly from the fleet of vehicles? Do you have a predictive maintenance? Do you have a driver safety or driver coaching program? All that stuff gets interconnected. So if you're interested, you look at marketplace.geotab.com. But we also, beyond that, we also have an incubator ourselves as well too. We invest in a number of organizations. That's called Torque Labs. So we walk, these companies that are vetted through a whole process of how they can partner with Geotab, getting richer insight into some of the engineers, the data, and there's a whole kind of program that we've invested in because we recognize that this is crucially important. And then for our partners as well too, and our customers, we run these data boot camps, right? So we do these a few times a year where people come in for 3 days and we walk them through how to create a predictive maintenance pipeline and all the AI techniques that we leverage and use. So we really do believe, and I think Susan, you kind of nail it on the head, it is about that partner ecosystem that helps us all accelerate and do much better together, because there's so many innovative companies sitting here in Ontario, nonetheless, that we're continuing to work with, and I think it's an exciting time for all of us. But it's only going to happen through partnership, through transparency, through openness, through dialogue, that we can kind of accelerate together.
Absolutely, I agree. Thank you so much. I see there's a question for Scott by Mara. So Scott, there's a question here. Mara, perhaps you need a little bit of a clarification if you're referring to particular type of tests like platooning or so on, or you're referring to, generally speaking, simulation modeling of autonomous testing, autonomous vehicles. So Scott, we have a question saying that we have lots of tests, digital twins, that test setting or simulation and digital twins that can potentially provide a lot of data. Do you think insurance companies can consider this, or are they already considering these kind of data for their decision?
Yeah, good question. And I think if I look at that, and hopefully I'm correct, I'm thinking platooning, convoying as well. Hopefully I do have that correct, because that certainly was something that I was bullish on. And then I'm glad to see it's come back into the forefront, especially with commercial trucking having a driver shortage right now. And the ability to move the freight, obviously post-COVID, it became very, very big. Yeah, they will look at that. And I think based on what the industry is doing now in the commercial side for long commercial vehicles. So right now you may see double trailers going down the highway. There's no reason to believe why we couldn't do that for platooning, which pilots are starting. So yeah, they will take that into consideration. I think it is a very safe risk from what we've seen on the long commercial vehicles. One thing we are trying to understand on the insurance side is with the driver shortage, on the convoying, it would be nice to work with the ministry or the insurance company to pursue that maybe that middle driver doesn't have to be licensed. I mean, AZ license. So if we even look at the forestry side where we can go off public roads, trucks can follow each other. Why does the middle or that driver have to be AZ licensed? Because if we have a driver shortage, then certainly this can help accelerate the propensity to move freight. So hopefully I answered that question correctly, but I did read that as convoying, platooning.
Thank you so much, Scott. We have time for one last quick answer question. I'll pick the question that came just from Kane Albright. That he's referring to some of the kind of more or less fragmented segments to operate or to manage the infrastructure. So can somebody comment on how we can collaborate across these different jurisdictions, Transport Canada, some city of, different municipal environment, Ministry of Transportation, to be able to have solutions that are applicable to all provinces and the states in a seamless way. Anybody can offer a 1 minute quick answer to this, and then we will wrap up. And I encourage everyone to connect to our audience, to our panelists for further conversation and dialogue.
Saiedeh, Susan here. I can give a high-level answer of that. Yes, the Ministry of Transportation is very aware that we've got multiple jurisdictions. And so it's one of the reasons that we're doing our policy and regulatory work in consultation with the US, with Quebec, with Manitoba, and with the federal government, because we know that, particularly in North America, we're land-based and people drive across state and provincial lines all the time. It's definitely, we haven't worked it all out yet. We definitely have not figured all of these details out, but there's definitely awareness that's being acknowledged across all the jurisdictions about trying to find federal standards or universal standards. I think they are evolving in different areas and different elements of this whole thing. Communication is the biggest tool we've got at the moment, so that we don't miss opportunities. Everything from the communication standards to the highway standards to the vehicle standards. Communication, and that is underway. We definitely have not worked out all the details yet, but we are talking to all of our neighbors. And Avon is doing a lot of that work, connecting across Ontario and into the States. We've got work in the Windsor-Essex area with MDOT. So we are trying to do cross-border stuff as well as cross-country stuff. And we're definitely monitoring all of that. At least that's my perspective.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Susan. Again, I encourage everyone to connect to our panelists and continue this dialogue. I want to conclude the session by asking all of the panelists to offer a very short, less than a minute, thoughts on things that you want to leave with the innovators or technology companies and the broader audience who are in our attendance. Let's start with Scott.
Sure. Yeah. Final thought, and quickly, I was follow up on platooning. There was a question about real-time testing, real-time data, and certainly that is where the insurance industry needs to go in autonomous side. We can't keep looking backwards to price forward, especially in this space and this risk. My final thought, level 3 is exciting to me, but also scares me. That mix of human vehicles on the road, we still have to monitor driver behavior as close as we should now. Getting into level 4 as well, but as much as the industry says, hey, this will affect our jobs and autonomous will take out, the transport truck driver, the drivers in general, I don't see that coming, but certainly I'm bullish on it. But I still think as the insurance industry, we do need to do a better job of making sure that we are focusing on the driver as much as we're focusing on the technology in that vehicle. So that mix will have to be leveled off to get the proper pricing, and obviously to make this work in a smooth system for an insurance claim or just in general moving forward on the industry.
Thanks a lot. Mike?
Yeah, I think, 3 pieces of advice for me, for SMEs would be quality, partnerships, and scale. Those 3 things. Don't underestimate the amount of work that you will be needing to do if you're digging into connected vehicle data. There's a lot of quality issues there, and those aren't immediately apparent if you take them at surface level. So be prepared to do a lot of digging there, specifically your software focused or AI focused. And then partnerships, I already talked a lot about that. Crucial, I think, channel partners for you to bring your solutions to scale, I think are needed. There's people out there who want to help, who have inroads. Find the right partner that you can make 1 + 1 = 3, and then scale. Think about scale, because something that works for a handful of vehicles needs to work for millions, right? If you truly want to be a differentiator out there, and the volume of data coming in makes it difficult. Even with the cloud systems that we have today, if you're not thinking about scale in the right ways and architecting it properly, it'll be a challenge for you. But yeah, exciting times ahead.
Well said. Thank you so much. Susan?
Thanks. I totally agree with the comments from Scott and Mike so far. My biggest comment definitely would have been to this group: partnership. Use all those regional tech centers. Get out in a vehicle or on a test track somewhere, because the large scale is something that needs to evolve, and you're not going to just leap to working, putting your technology all across the province. So partnerships are a huge opportunity. And I think that there's lots of programs out there for funding support, for networking, and there are lots of pilots going on for road authorities. So not just the provincial government, but the federal government and the local municipalities. And I think your window into all of that is AVEN and all of these regional tech centers. So I think really need to use that existing organization and that existing opportunity.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our expert panelists for sharing their ideas, knowledge, and expertise. Many thanks to all of you who joined this event and the organizers and the sponsors who worked really hard to make this event happen. So I now invite our MC, Chris, to join me back on the stage for transitioning to the rest of the event.
Great. And thank you so much, Saiedeh. Thank you, Susan, Scott, and Mike for your expert views and comments in all of this. And if I could sum it all up, I think you've heard it from the experts. If you're a small and medium-sized enterprise and you're looking to commercialize new technology, then probably the AVEN network and the regional technology development sites is your best path forward into that. And we can help you with your technology development and make connections to partners, regulatory, private sector, larger companies, and insurance to move all that forward. So thank you all again for your expert advice.
Thank you.